It happened on a Thursday, a cold, bright Thursday in late November, the kind where the air in Maplewood, Pennsylvania, felt crisp enough to cut through bone. Emily Turner had left work 2 hours early, something she rarely did, because a client meeting was canceled at the last minute. She took it as a small blessing, maybe even a sign. She thought, I'll get home before sunset, surprise Mark, and maybe we'll finally talk like we used to. But the moment she stepped into her driveway, something shifted inside her, like a thread pulled too tight. What she would see inside that house, what her husband would say, and what her father would endure, would destroy the life she thought she had. Stay with me, because what comes next will move you deeply. And you, what would you have done if the person you trusted the most betrayed the person who raised you with everything he had? Tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? Thomas Tom Whitaker was 76 years old, a quiet man whose hands still carried the roughness of a life spent repairing broken things. He had spent most of his years as a small-town mechanic, working in a single-bay garage off Route 17, where the bell above the door clanged every time someone brought in an old Ford pickup, coughing itself to death. Everyone in Maplewood knew him, everyone trusted him, and everyone said the same thing. Tom Whitaker wouldn't take $1 more than something was worth, and he'd give you $2 worth of kindness just because he could. He lived in a modest single-story home outside town, on a road where mailboxes leaned with the weight of years, and where the evenings smelled like burning leaves and wood smoke from neighbors' chimneys. But inside his home, silence had begun to settle, heavy, patient, like snow building on a roof. Since his wife Helen passed away 8 years earlier, Tom had lived alone. He cooked simple meals, grits with butter, scrambled eggs, the occasional pot of beef stew. He washed his clothes by hand even though the washer still worked. He kept the house tidy, though the dust on the picture frames grew thicker each year. And every night he sat in his old recliner with a blanket folded neatly over his knees and looked at a picture of his daughter, Emily, taken when she graduated from Carnegie Mellon. She was smiling, hopeful, a brand-new degree in civil engineering in her hands. In that photo, she still belonged to him. At least it felt that way. But life has a way of tugging children away from home. Time doesn't erase regret. It reveals it. Little did Tom know. Regret was about to knock on his door in a way that would change everything. Tom had worked through winters so cold his fingers turned numb around a wrench. He had worked through summers so humid, sweat soaked through his shirt, before 10 in the morning. He missed birthdays, barbecues, Sunday services, because someone needed their car fixed to get to work, to get to school, to get to the hospital. He always said, people depend on their cars more than they depend on their own legs in this country. So if their car's hurtin', they're hurtin'. And if they're hurtin', I can't rest. He saved every dollar he could to give Emily what he never had, a future outside Maplewood's limits. Her mother had dreamed of it too, before cancer hollowed her out in ways Tom still couldn't speak about. Helen made Tom promise, on one of those dim hospital mornings where sunlight barely touched the blinds, that he would get Emily out of their small life, that he would push her, support her, and never let hardship convince Emily she had to shrink herself. Tom promised. And he kept that promise. He drove her to early tutoring sessions before dawn. He sat through college interviews wearing his only suit, the one that smelled faintly of motor oil no matter how many times it was dry cleaned. He took out loans, worked extra shifts, and sold the old fishing boat he loved. But Emily thrived. She got scholarships. She moved to Pittsburgh for college, and then farther than Tom ever knew someone could go without losing themselves, or losing him. Emily became a transportation engineer specializing in urban planning, a field that had her moving across states from project to project. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Raleigh, each move taking her farther from Maplewood, farther from the creaking floors of her childhood home, farther from the man who had given her everything without ever asking for anything in return. Phone calls grew shorter, visits home grew fewer, birthdays became text messages, holidays became tight schedules, and grief settled between them like a locked door no one wanted to reopen. Tom never blamed her. He told himself she was building the life he always wanted for her. But late at night, when the house made those soft, settling sounds old houses make, he wondered whether he had mistaken distance for success. He wondered whether giving her wings had meant losing her entirely. Then came Mark Turner. Emily met him at a conference in Denver. Charismatic, articulate, with the kind of confidence that filled a room before he even walked into it. He worked in corporate consulting, specializing in infrastructure budgets. Precisely the kind of person who understood Emily's world. When she brought him home to Maplewood the first time, Tom studied the man carefully. Mark shook his hand with a grip too firm, complimented the house in a way that sounded like he was evaluating it, asked how much Tom still owed on his mortgage. Before dessert, red flags Tom couldn't name fluttered quietly in his mind, but Emily's eyes sparkled. Her laughter was lighter. Her plans seemed bigger. So Tom swallowed his unease and welcomed Mark into his family, telling himself love sometimes looks different than what we're used to. But what he didn't know, what Emily didn't know, was that Mark Turner was the kind of man who saw people as assets or burdens, and in his silent calculations, Thomas Whitaker ranked low, very low. The distance between Emily and her father widened after the wedding. At first it was subtle. Missed calls, postponed visits, excuses that sounded reasonable. Dad, work's insane this month. Mark and I already made plans with friends. We'll come by next weekend, I promise. But next weekend rarely came. Sometimes Tom would find his own calls went to voicemail immediately, as if he had been quietly and intentionally sent there. Sometimes text messages showed delivered, but never read. And sometimes, when he mustered the courage to ask Emily whether everything was all right, she would pause too long before answering. Dad, you worry too much. We're fine. Really. But her voice held the sound of someone repeating something she had been told to say, and Tom, gentle, trusting Tom, chose to believe her, because believing the alternative would shatter him. 2 winters ago, Tom's doctor told him his heart was weakening, not dangerously yet, but enough to monitor, enough to slow down, enough to make him think about things he'd avoided since Helen died. He didn't tell Emily. He didn't want to be a burden. He didn't want to interfere with her marriage. He didn't want to add weight to a life that already seemed packed tight with deadlines and expectations. So he took his medication. He attended checkups alone. He changed his diet. He pretended everything was fine. But the truth was simple and brutal. He missed his daughter. He feared running out of time, and he wondered every day whether she would ever come back, not to Maplewood, but to him. Little did he know. The moment that would bring her back was closer than he ever imagined, and it would begin with a single trembling decision. It happened in mid-November. Tom woke up before sunrise, as he always did, but this time the ache in his chest felt different. Not sharp, not dangerous, just lonely, a hollow ache echoing inside him like an empty church. He sat at the edge of his bed, rubbing his hands together, and whispered to himself, I just want to see her. That's all. Just see her. He hadn't visited Emily and Mark's home in over a year. They always insisted they would come to him. They rarely did. So Tom made a decision. Quiet, tender, fragile, like a leaf detaching from a branch. He would go to them. He packed a small overnight bag, folded 2 clean shirts, placed his medication in a zippered pouch, and then, with a trembling breath, he opened the wooden box beside his bed. Inside was an object he never touched unless the moment mattered. A photograph of Emily at age 7, missing her 2 front teeth, holding a cardboard sign that said, World's Best Dad, in marker. Tom looked at it for a long time. Then he placed it gently into his bag. He didn't know why he felt the urge to bring it, but symbols have a way of guiding us long before we understand their purpose. As he locked his front door, he glanced back once, just once, at the house that still held Helen's laughter in the corners. Then he climbed into his old truck, turned the key, and began the drive toward the life he believed still belonged to him. But what he would find would break something inside him. The drive to Willow Creek, a quiet suburban neighborhood 30 minutes outside Philadelphia, was long, slow, and filled with memories Tom didn't know how to stop. He thought about the nights he stayed up to help Emily finish school projects, the way she used to climb onto his shoulders to hang the star on the Christmas tree, the mornings they ate pancakes shaped like animals. Helen's idea. Always Helen's. When he reached their street, Sycamore Lane, he felt a flicker of hope warm him from the inside. Children played basketball in driveways. Dogs barked behind white fences. A mail carrier made her rounds. It looked safe, pleasant, family-centered. Maybe she's happy here, Tom thought. Maybe everything is okay. He parked a few houses down, wanting to surprise her. He practiced how he might greet her. He rehearsed how he would ask, softly, never accusing, whether he had done something wrong. He walked slowly toward their house, taking in the quiet hush of late afternoon. But the moment he reached the front porch, he heard voices inside. Mark's voice, sharp, irritated, and another voice, thin, trembling, weary, his own. Except he wasn't speaking. He was being spoken to. Tom froze. He stood perfectly still, the way a frightened animal stands still, hoping the danger will pass without noticing him. But what he heard next would change everything Emily believed about her husband and about herself. Here, right here, is where the camera would push in, where the score would shift low, tense, heartbreaking, where the narrator's voice would drop. Stay with me, because what Tom is about to witness inside that house will shatter the life Emily thinks she knows. Tom stood on the porch of his daughter's house, his hand hovering near the door, though he hadn't yet knocked. He hadn't even built the courage to call out her name. All he could do was listen, frozen, breath shallow, shoulders trembling beneath his old denim jacket. Inside, Mark's voice cut through the quiet suburban air like something sharp dragged across glass. What did I tell you, old man? You don't just show up here. You call. You ask. You wait. Tom's heartbeat stumbled. Emily wasn't home. He knew that now. And Mark, without the mask he wore for her, was revealing something ugly, something cruel. Tom took a single step back, his boot scraping lightly against the concrete of the porch. But the noise was swallowed by Mark's rising irritation. You think Emily has time for you? You think she wants you here? Jesus, you're pathetic. There's a kind of pain that doesn't feel like pain at all. It feels like numbness, like winter entering the bones. And that numbness spread through Tom's chest. Inside the house, sunlight filtered through tall windows, catching dust motes in midair. The hardwood floors gleamed. The furniture was modern, sterile, too clean to feel lived in. A faint scent of eucalyptus hung in the air, coming from a candle burning on the kitchen island. And on the far side of the living room, Tom stood there, hat in hand, shoulders curved inward, his overnight bag on the floor beside him. His breathing was uneven, his cheeks flushed, his eyes fixed on Mark like someone trying to understand a language he'd never heard spoken before. Mark stood 2 feet away, dressed in a tailored shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, jaw tightened with barely restrained annoyance. He looked like a man who'd been waiting for a moment when no one else was watching. And now he had it. "Pick that up!" Mark snapped suddenly, pointing at the overnight bag. "I told you, we don't have space for your junk lying around." Tom bent down slowly, the stiffness in his knees making the movement painful. He picked up the bag and held it close to him. I can come back later," he whispered. "I didn't mean to intrude." Mark let out a laugh, cold, hollow. "But you did intrude. You always intrude. You think Emily doesn't have enough on her plate? You showing up unannounced is the last thing she needs." Tom swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I thought maybe she might want to see me." Mark took a step closer, too close, invading the space where decency should exist. "You thought wrong." The words hit Tom like something physical. He blinked several times as though trying to clear water from his eyes. "I don't—" He stopped because his voice cracked. He tried again. "I don't want to be a burden." Mark's smirk widened. "Good. Then stop acting like one." And just like that, like a match struck in a dry forest, the humiliation deepened. Tom's hands began to shake. The photograph of 7-year-old Emily peeked out from the half-open zipper of his bag. Mark noticed. He pointed at it with disdain. That? You brought that? God, you're unbelievable. Tom instinctively closed the zipper, shielding the picture. I brought it because it reminds me of her. Of course it does, Mark scoffed. Because that's all you have. Old memories. Emily has moved on, Tom. She has a life now. A real life. And she doesn't need you dragging her backward. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, Mark delivered the blow that shattered something fragile inside Tom. She doesn't even answer your calls half the time. You know why? Because I delete them before she sees them. Tom went still. Completely still. Like a tree struck by lightning but still standing out of habit. My calls? He asked quietly. You deleted them? Mark crossed his arms. Someone had to. You were stressing her out. She doesn't need your guilt trips or your health problems or your emotional neediness. Grow up. Let her live her life. Tom felt dizzy, so dizzy he had to steady himself against the counter. My health problems? He repeated, confused and fragile. I never told her. Exactly, Mark said, and it's going to stay that way. But she deserves to know, and I decide what she needs to know. There are lines a human heart should never hear, lines that bruise the soul. This was one of them. Mark grabbed Tom's overnight bag from his hand and tossed it toward the front door. Get out! Tom stared at the bag lying on the floor. He stared at the photograph inside it. He stared at the door. I came here because I miss her, he whispered. I'm her father. Mark's voice boomed through the house. And I'm her husband, which means I get to protect her from whatever drains her energy. Right now, that's you. He walked to the door, grabbed the handle, and swung it open. Cold air rushed in. Leaves skittered across the porch. Somewhere far away a lawnmower droned. Tom didn't move, not because he wanted to stay, but because humiliation had frozen his legs. You don't belong here, Mark added, and you don't belong in our life. And that was the moment, the exact moment, when Emily opened the door from the garage, carrying her work bag, still wearing her ID badge, still expecting a quiet evening at home. She froze. Her breath hitched. Her pulse stumbled. She saw. Her father holding back tears, his bag on the floor, her husband towering over him, the door wide open like a command, and her world, her entire world, tilted. Dad? She whispered. Tom turned toward her, shame washing over his face. He wiped at his eyes quickly like a child caught crying. Sweetheart, I didn't mean, I just stopped by. I can come back another time. Emily looked at Mark. Her voice trembled. What's happening here? But what she heard next would destroy everything she believed. Mark stepped forward. Your dad showed up out of nowhere again. I told him we had plans tonight. I tried to set boundaries, but he... Boundaries? She whispered. With my father? Mark shrugged, as if the conversation were trivial. He doesn't understand how busy you are. He doesn't respect your time. He thinks he can just walk in like this is still his house. Emily's eyebrows drew together. My father has never disrespected me. Mark's voice sharpened. Then why is he here crying and causing drama? Tom flinched. He covered his face for a second. I'm not causing anything. I just wanted to see you. Emily stepped toward her father, and Mark grabbed her arm, firmly. Listen to me first. But what she said next, it sliced the air clean. Let go of me. Mark dropped her arm, stunned. Emily rushed to her father, lifting his overnight bag, brushing dust off it, her movements frantic and protective. Dad, did he yell at you? Tom hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Emily turned back toward Mark, her eyes blazing. And what she asked would break Mark's carefully curated world. Did you delete my father's calls? Mark blinked. Emily, don't be dramatic. Answer me. He paused, and in that pause, truth began to unravel. Emily's voice lowered, trembling with something old and aching. How long have you been doing this to him? And to me? But Mark had no idea. What she would discover next would destroy everything. And you, what would you have done in that moment? Before I continue, if this story is moving you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It helps us bring more stories like this to you. Silence settled inside the house like smoke. Thick, choking, impossible to ignore. Emily stood between her father and her husband, her breath trembling, her pulse uneven. She felt like someone seeing a crime scene unfold in slow motion. She didn't know where to look. She didn't know where to stand. And worst of all, she didn't know who her husband really was. "Mark," she said quietly, "answer my question." He didn't. He straightened his shoulders, as if preparing for a negotiation, as if she were a client, as if her father, her gentle, aging father, were an inconvenience. "Emily," he finally said, voice dropping into that condescending calm she once mistook for stability. "Sometimes you need me to make decisions for us. You don't realize how stressed you get by your father's issues. I was protecting you." Emily's mouth fell open. "Protecting me?" Her hand tightened around her father's bag. "From what, exactly?" Mark exhaled slowly. "From guilt, from obligations, from emotional burdens that slow you down. You're trying to build your career. You don't need to be dragged into every little thing with him." Tom looked down at the floor, shoulders shrinking inward, as though apologizing for existing, and something inside Emily cracked. She remembered every time she thought her father was ignoring her, every call she thought he didn't return, every moment she felt abandoned, forgotten, unloved. The truth surfaced like a body rising from deep water, bloated, undeniable. It was never her father. It was always Mark, always. A wave of nausea hit her. "Mark," she said, voice trembling, "did you delete my father's calls?" He opened his mouth to deny it, but Tom, voice shaking, whispered, "He said he did." Emily felt her world tilt. "Did you?" Her voice grew stronger. "Did you delete his calls and messages?" Mark clenched his jaw. "I managed them, because you weren't handling them well, and because he—" "Answer me!" The sound of her voice startled even her father. It startled Mark too. He winced. Then, quietly, almost defiantly, "Yes. I deleted some. I filtered others. I blocked a few times when you were overwhelmed. I did what I had to do." Emily stepped back as if struck. "You blocked my own father?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you do that?" Mark's expression hardened. "Because he's needy, Emily. Because he clings. Because he doesn't respect boundaries. And because he makes you feel bad about yourself." Tom lifted his head, eyes glassy. "I never meant to make her feel bad," he whispered. "You don't," Emily said instantly, turning to him. "Dad, you don't. Not ever." She faced Mark again. "But you do." Emily's hands shook as she grabbed her phone and scrolled frantically. And then she saw them. Unread voicemails from her father that she never received, messages that never appeared, missed calls she never knew existed, dozens of them. Her vision blurred. Why would you do this?" she whispered. Mark moved closer, trying to soften his tone. "Em, listen. You get emotional about your dad. You stop sleeping. You get anxious." "That's because I thought he was ignoring me," she cried. Mark's face tightened. "Well, now you know why he shouldn't be involved in everything. Look how upset you are." Something inside Emily snapped completely. "You're gaslighting me," she said softly. Mark chuckled, but the sound was brittle. "Oh, come on, Emily, don't make this dramatic. Your dad shows up unannounced, crying, dumping his issues. He was crying because of you," she shouted. Tom flinched at the volume. Emily took a steadying breath and lowered her voice instantly, turning to him. Dad, it's okay. You did nothing wrong." Then she faced Mark again, anger turning into clarity. "What else did you hide from me?" Mark didn't answer. But guilt has a way of showing on a man's face long before he speaks. Emily scanned her phone again. Blocked numbers, filtered emails, old notifications rerouted into folders she never created. Her stomach dropped. Did you tell people not to contact me? Like neighbors? Or the doctor?" Mark rubbed his temples. "Emily, this is spiraling. You're overreacting." "No," she whispered. "This is me waking up." Tom cleared his throat softly, as though afraid to interrupt. "There's something else." he said quietly. A neighbor, Mrs. Keating. She told me she tried to reach you. About my health. She said she sent an email. Emily froze. What email? Mark stiffened. No one needs to bother you with that kind of thing, Emily. Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. Oh my God, she whispered. You hid my father's health issues from me? Mark stepped forward, trying to regain control. He told me he didn't want to tell you. He didn't want to be a burden. I respected his wishes. Emily turned to her father. Is that true? Tom hesitated. Not out of dishonesty, but out of shame. I didn't want to worry you, he said quietly, but I didn't tell him to hide anything from you. Emily felt her knees weaken. You hid his condition from me, Mark shot back. He has a heart issue, Emily, it's not a crisis. And you get so emotional when it comes to him. Because he is my father, she cried, voice breaking. I lost my mother. He's all I have. And I'm your husband, Mark insisted. And I did what I thought was best. Emily backed away from him. No, you did what was best for you. Tom suddenly swayed on his feet. His hand gripped the edge of the kitchen table. His breath grew shallow. A bead of sweat formed on his temple. Dad? Emily rushed toward him. Dad, are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired. But he wasn't fine. And Emily saw it. Mark rolled his eyes. Oh, for God's sake, he's doing this now. Really? Emily turned slowly toward her husband, and fear left her face. What replaced it was something colder, more precise, stronger. Get away from him, she said. Mark raised his palms. Emily, don't turn this into abuse. He's manipulating you. But Emily had reached her limit. This conversation is over, she said. Dad, we're leaving. Mark stepped forward. You're not taking him anywhere. Emily stared at him. Watch me. She grabbed her father's hand gently, supporting his weight. Tom whispered, voice trembling, Sweetheart, I don't want to cause trouble. You're not, she said. You're saving me. Mark followed them toward the door. You're not thinking clearly. You're acting emotional. Yes, she snapped. Because I'm human. She opened the door. Cold November air washed over them. Tom exhaled shakily. Mark tried one last time. Emily, if you leave now, don't expect me to welcome you back until you calm down. She turned around slowly. Then get comfortable, she said, because it might take years. And with that, she helped her father down the steps, held him close, guided him to her car. Mark stood in the doorway, a silhouette in a house that suddenly looked too big, too empty, too cold. The door closed behind him, and something inside Emily closed too, but what she would discover soon would break her heart in ways she never imagined. Little did she know, the truth had only begun to surface. Emily started the car, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. Dad, she whispered, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. But Tom looked out the window, eyes glistening. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Love blinds us, sometimes to the people closest to us. He whispered something then, something she didn't understand, but what you learn next will change everything. The drive from Willow Creek back toward Maplewood was dim, quiet, and filled with broken breaths. Outside the car, Pennsylvania's late autumn landscape stretched endlessly, bare trees clawing at a gray sky, fields of yellowed grass rolling beneath the last light of the day, and barns standing like tired old guardians along the highway. Inside the car, Emily kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting gently over her father's. He stared out the window, the reflection of passing streetlights flickering in his eyes like fading memories. Neither of them spoke at first. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Finally, Emily whispered, Dad, how long has he treated you like that? Tom hesitated. Hesitation, Emily finally understood, was its own kind of confession. Long enough, he said. She tightened her jaw. Why didn't you tell me? He smiled sadly, a smile that held too many years of sacrifice. Because you were happy, sweetheart. Or at least, I thought you were. Emily blinked hard, fighting tears. Dad, nothing about that was happiness. Maybe not now, Tom said softly. But love changes over time. Sometimes we don't notice things slipping away until they're gone. His voice cracked on the last word. Emily held the steering wheel tighter. She didn't realize it yet, but she was beginning a journey back to the very heart she had abandoned, and what she would uncover next would reshape everything she believed about her past. Emily pulled into her father's gravel driveway. The small house stood exactly as she remembered. Weathered wood siding, a sagging porch. A wind chime Helen had hung decades earlier still clinking in the cold November breeze. Lights glowed faintly inside. It felt like stepping back in time. As she helped her father out of the car, he winced slightly, pressing a hand to his chest. "Dad," she whispered, "I need to take you to the hospital." He shook his head. "I'm fine, just tired." But Emily saw the truth, in the way his breath stuttered, the way his shoulders slumped, the way age clung to him like winter frost. She guided him into the house, and warmth washed over them. The scent inside was familiar. Old wood, laundry soap, and something comforting she hadn't smelled in years. Her mother's vanilla and almond lotion, still faint in the air, as if her spirit never left. Emily swallowed hard. "This house," she whispered. "It still feels like home." Tom hung his jacket on the hook near the door. "It is home, for both of us." Emily looked around. The faded couch, the quilt her mother stitched, the framed pictures lining the hallway. Her childhood wasn't gone. She had just stopped visiting it. For the first time in years, the weight of her absence hit her like an unexpected winter gust. She didn't notice Tom watching her. Softly, quietly, gratefully. "Dad," Emily said gently, "please sit. Let me get your things." Tom lowered himself into the recliner, the one with fraying edges from years of use. Emily took off his shoes, folded the blanket over his legs, and brought him a glass of water. He looked up at her, surprised. "You don't have to fuss," he said softly. "Yes," she answered, "I do." For the first time since childhood, Emily knelt beside him. She touched his hand, the same hand that taught her how to tie her shoes, how to check the oil in her first car, how to trust the world. Only now, the skin was thin, the veins more visible, the warmth more fragile. She whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't see sooner. I'm sorry I wasn't here." Tom squeezed her fingers gently. "You're here now. That's what matters." But Emily knew it wasn't enough. She had missed years. Years she would never get back. Years her husband had stolen without her knowing. Inside her chest, guilt took root like a blooming bruise. Later that night, after she helped her father take his medication, after she made him tea, after she insisted he rest, Emily wandered to the hallway lined with framed photographs. She paused at one, her 7th birthday, her father wearing a paper crown, her mother holding a cake, Emily smiling so wide her whole face glowed. She lifted the frame gently. Her throat tightened. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Slow, steady. Her father. "I remember that day," he said softly. "You were so excited you wouldn't sleep the night before." Emily smiled faintly. "I remember Mom baking that cake. It collapsed in the middle." Tom chuckled, a sound she realized she hadn't heard in months. "That's right. She called it creative architecture." Emily held the photo closer. "I miss her," she whispered. "I do too," Tom answered, his voice filled with years of quiet grief. The house fell still again. Emily took a shaky breath. "Dad, why didn't you tell me about your heart?" He sighed, long and tired. "Because you had your own life, and because your mother, she'd want me to let you fly." Emily closed her eyes. "I would have come home more." "I know," he said. "That's why I didn't tell you." A tear rolled down Emily's cheek. "I don't want to lose you, too." Tom reached up, brushing her cheek with a weak hand. "You're not losing me. Not yet." But the truth lingered unspoken. Time was running thinner than either of them knew, and what Emily would soon discover about his condition would shake her to her core. They sat together at the small kitchen table, the same table where Emily once did her homework, where Helen once lit candles during power outages. Steam rose from 2 mugs of chamomile tea. Outside, the wind rustled the last leaves of autumn. Inside, truths waited to be freed. Emily clasped her hands together. "Dad, what exactly did the neighbor want to tell me?" "Mrs. Keating," Tom hesitated. She didn't want to upset you. But I want the truth, Emily insisted. Please. Tom looked down. My last hospital visit, the doctor recommended a stronger medication, and they mentioned the possibility of needing a pacemaker someday. Emily froze. What? When? About 3 months ago. Her breath wavered. Dad, 3 months? Why didn't I know? He sighed. Because I didn't want you rushing back here thinking I'm dying. But you're my father, she said, voice breaking. And you're my daughter, he replied. And I want you to live your life. Emily shook her head, tears falling. My life doesn't matter if I'm losing you. Tom reached for her hand. You're not losing me yet. But, sweetheart, we don't choose how long we have. Another tear fell. But we choose how we spend the time we have left. He squeezed her hand gently. That's right, she whispered. Then I'm spending mine with you. They sat in silence for a long moment, holding hands across the table. Emily thought things were beginning to make sense, but what she didn't know was that the deepest truth, the one that would rewrite everything, still waited in the shadows, and what she would discover next would break her heart in a different way. Stay with me. The story is just beginning to heal. Emily woke before sunrise, not because of an alarm, not because of habit, but because her heart was beating too loudly for her to sleep. The house was quiet, still, wrapped in the soft blue darkness of early morning. She slipped out of bed and stepped into the hallway. The wooden floor creaked softly, the same sound it made when she was little, sneaking into her parents' room after nightmares. But this time, she wasn't the one afraid. She found her father asleep in his recliner, the blanket tucked under his chin, his breath shallow but steady. A small lamp glowed beside him, casting golden light across his weathered face. She studied him. The wrinkles, the hollow of his cheeks, the slight tremor in his fingers, the heaviness in his chest. How long had he carried all this alone? How long had she looked away without meaning to? She knelt beside him and whispered, I'm here now, Dad. I'm here. He didn't wake, but somehow he smiled in his sleep. Emily cooked breakfast, something she hadn't done in his kitchen in over a decade. Bacon sizzled softly. Coffee brewed in the old machine with the cracked handle. Sunlight slowly filled the room, warming the faded wallpaper. The moment smelled like childhood. When Tom finally woke and shuffled into the kitchen, he paused at the doorway, eyes soft, voice barely audible. You cooked. Emily nodded. You used to make us breakfast every morning before school. He chuckled. I burned half of them. And I loved every bite. That made him smile. They sat across from each other, steam rising from their plates. It wasn't just food. It was reconciliation served warm. Tom took a careful sip of his coffee and exhaled deeply. It's been a long time since I had company in the morning. Emily lowered her gaze. I know, and I'm sorry. He reached across the table, placing his hand over hers. Don't be sorry. Be here. That's enough. But Emily knew it wasn't enough. She couldn't undo years of absence with one breakfast, but she could start. Emily insisted on taking him to his cardiologist that afternoon. Tom resisted at first. Old habits, old pride. But he finally agreed. The clinic sat between a pharmacy and a small-town insurance office. Inside, everything smelled like antiseptic, and winter coats damp from the cold. Nurses greeted Tom by name. Emily noticed that. Not with judgment, with shame. Her father had been through this alone, repeatedly, quietly. During the checkup, the cardiologist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked over Tom's chart. Her face softened when she saw Emily. You must be the daughter. Emily swallowed. Yes, and I'm sorry I haven't been here. The doctor gave a gentle nod, a nod that said she understood more than she said. Then she turned to Tom. Your heart function has decreased a little since your last visit. Emily's stomach dropped. How much? She whispered. Not dangerously so, the doctor said carefully, but enough that we need to monitor him closely, and we may need to discuss a pacemaker sooner than later. Tom stared down at his hands. Emily reached for his arm. Why didn't you call me when things got worse? He hesitated. I didn't want to interrupt your life. Emily felt tears rising. My life is Meaningless if I'm not here for you. The doctor placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. Be present. That's the best medicine he can have. But what she didn't know, and what Tom had been hiding, was even harder to hear. After the appointment, they sat in the truck for a moment, silent. Frost had begun to cling to the windshield. Traffic hummed faintly on the main road. Finally, Tom spoke. There's something I should tell you. Something I should have told you long ago. Emily turned toward him. Her father rarely used that tone, that trembling, hesitant tone. What is it? He swallowed. It's about your mother. Emily straightened. My mother? Dad, what are you talking about? Tom rubbed his hands together. She made me promise something before she died. Something that changed the way I raised you. Emily held her breath. What promise? Tom stared at the dashboard. She made me promise that I would never ask you to stay, that I would never let my loneliness become your burden. She wanted you to chase the world, not carry the weight of ours. Emily felt tears stinging the corners of her eyes. I would have stayed if you needed me. That's exactly what she feared, he whispered. She knew your heart. Big, soft, too willing to give. She didn't want you sacrificing your dreams for us. Emily wiped her cheek. But Dad, I wasn't supposed to sacrifice you either. Tom closed his eyes. I thought I was honoring her. All these years, I thought letting you go was the right thing. But maybe I let you go too much. Silence filled the truck. Heavy, heartbreaking, tender. Emily reached for his hand. We lost her, Dad, but we don't have to lose each other. Tom nodded, a tear rolling down his cheek. I'm tired of being alone, he whispered. I'm tired of pretending I'm strong enough to do this without you. Emily wrapped her arms around him. You don't have to pretend anymore. Back home, Tom rested while Emily cleaned the house, dusting shelves, washing dishes, fixing the squeaky back door, organizing medications. Each small act felt like stitching a torn seam. While cleaning the pantry, she found a cardboard box pushed far to the back. Inside it, old notebooks, ledgers from the garage, receipts, a plaque that read, Whittaker's Auto. Honest work, fair price. She traced the letters with her finger. Her father had spent a lifetime fixing broken things. But who fixed him? Suddenly, an idea sparked in her mind. Wild, unexpected, urgent. A project, a purpose. A way to rebuild not just her father's life, but his dignity. She walked back into the living room where he slept. Dad, she whispered gently, waking him. I have an idea. He blinked sleepily. An idea? For you, for the town, for us. He looked confused, but hopeful. What kind of idea? Emily smiled softly. A community repair workshop, a place where people can bring broken things, cars, appliances, tools, and you teach them how to fix them. You teach what you've spent a lifetime doing. Tom stared at her, eyes wide, breath catching. You think anyone would come? I think the whole town would come, she said. And I think you need this. Something that gives your days meaning again. He swallowed hard. Helen always said I should have taught more, that I had more to give. And you still do, Emily whispered. Tom leaned back, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say yes, she smiled. But before he could answer, tears filled his eyes. Sweetheart, you have no idea what this means to me. But Emily did know, because in that moment, she finally understood that healing wasn't just medicine. It was purpose, connection, community, and her father, her quiet, gentle, overlooked father, was about to become the heart of something beautiful, something lasting, something that would outlive both of them. Emily didn't know it yet, but this idea would change Maplewood. It would change her father. It would change her. And the man she left behind? He would soon realize what he lost, because when a community gathers around kindness, even the darkest truths eventually come to light. The next morning, Emily woke before her alarm, something inside her buzzing with a nervous kind of hope. She brewed coffee, scrambled eggs, toasted bread, and called softly into the living room. Breakfast is ready, Dad. Tom rose slowly from his recliner. But today, something was different. His shoulders weren't hunched. His steps weren't as heavy. His eyes held a spark she hadn't seen in years. "Smells good," he said, settling at the kitchen table. Emily smiled. "I want to talk about the community workshop." He chuckled shyly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sweetheart, are you sure anyone would care about something like that?" Emily set a small notebook in front of him. "I already wrote down a list of people who would." Tom blinked. She flipped open the notebook. Jake Mueller, the high school kid whose truck breaks every month. Mrs. Thompson, the widow with the ancient lawnmower. Bill Harmon, the retired teacher restoring old radios. The church youth group, always looking for volunteer projects. The local food pantry, constantly needing appliance repairs. The veterans' home, with wheelchairs needing tune-ups. The school district, buses needing small, low-cost fixes, and many more. Tom stared, stunned. "All these people, you think they'd come?" "I know they would," she answered. Something inside him stirred, a mix of pride, disbelief, and the fragile hope that life still had room for him. "Let's try," he whispered. They drove to the old garage where Tom had worked for 40 years. The building sat at the edge of town, its red paint now faded to a muted barn brown, the Whitaker's Auto sign dangling crookedly. But when Tom stepped out of the truck, his breath caught. The memories rushed back. Teaching Emily how to check tire pressure, Helen bringing him dinner on long nights, neighbors dropping by for coffee and conversation, the sound of the bell above the door, the comforting smell of oil, metal, and sawdust. Emily watched his face soften with nostalgia. "Dad, this place still has life in it," she said. He ran a trembling hand along the garage door. "I thought the world forgot about me after I retired." She stepped closer. "The world didn't forget you. You just stopped showing up." He closed his eyes, letting her words settle. Then, with unexpected resolve, he said, "Let's clean it up." News travels fast in small towns. By the time they returned with cleaning supplies, 2 neighbors were already waiting outside the garage. Bill Harmon, holding a toolbox. Mrs. Thompson, holding 2 thermoses of hot chocolate. "We heard you're opening the place up again," Bill said, grinning. "Thought you could use a hand." Tom looked between them, overwhelmed. "Well, I don't know if opening is the right word." Mrs. Thompson patted his arm. "Nonsense. Maplewood needs this, and we need you." One by one, more people arrived. Jake with a broom, the church youth group with trash bags, a few town mechanics donating spare parts, the librarian dropping off coffee and donuts. Emily stepped back, taking in the scene. A forgotten building, a retired man who thought his life was shrinking, a community that still remembered him, all converging in a single, powerful moment. She whispered, "This is it. This is the beginning." Tom stood at the center of the group, bewildered, humbled, emotional. He cleared his throat. "Well, if everyone's willing, let's get to work." And just like that, the Whitaker Community Workshop was born. The next several days unfolded like a quiet miracle. They scrubbed floors, repainted walls, removed rusted shelves, organized tools, repaired the lighting, oiled the garage door, replaced cracked windows, restored the old workbench. Dust and laughter filled the air equally. Emily worked beside her father every day, learning things she never bothered to learn before. How to use a torque wrench, how to listen to an engine, like listening to a heartbeat, how machines break in predictable ways, and how people break in unpredictable ones. Tom taught her with patience, gentle, proud, grounded. At one point, as she held a flashlight for him, he whispered, "You always had your mother's hands." Emily looked down at her fingers, small, slender, steady. She smiled through tears. "I hope I have your heart." Tom paused, voice trembling. "You do, more than you know." A week later, they held the first official workshop class. Flyers had been posted in the diner, the grocery store, the church bulletin board, the high school, the post office, the community Facebook page. At 9 a.m., people began pouring in. Young, old, teens, veterans, single moms, retirees, curious neighbors. Emily nearly cried when she counted over 50 people. Tom stepped to the front, wiping his hands on an old rag. He cleared his throat, voice unsteady. Thank you all for coming. I'm not much of a teacher, but I know a thing or two about fixing things. And maybe that's something we could all use." A ripple of warm laughter filled the room. He continued, "This place isn't just about repairs. It's about community, helping each other, learning together, and maybe making life a little easier for folks." Emily felt her chest tighten with pride. Tom looked younger, stronger, happier. He belonged here. After the class, people lined up to thank him. Mrs. Thompson hugged him. Jake asked if he could come every Saturday. The youth group asked if they could volunteer. Tom's eyes shone with something Emily hadn't seen since her mother died: purpose. During one of the workshop days, Emily stood outside watching her father laugh with two teenagers fixing a lawnmower. Suddenly, she felt a warm presence beside her. It was Bill. "You did this," he said. Emily shook her head. "They did. Dad did." Bill chuckled. "No, you brought him back. You gave him something to wake up for." Emily swallowed hard. "I abandoned him for too long." Bill's voice softened. "We all leave home, Emily. What matters is you came back." She wiped a tear discreetly. But Bill's next words hit deeper. "And it looks like Maplewood needed you too." Emily had spent her adult life chasing cities, promotions, impossible deadlines, but nothing she'd ever built gave her the feeling she felt now. For the first time she wondered, was I running toward success or running away from grief? She didn't know the answer yet, but she was beginning to see a different version of her future, one rooted in community, family, and legacy. Late one evening, as Emily and Tom closed the garage, sweeping the last bit of dust from the floor, a sleek black SUV pulled into the lot. Emily froze. Tom stopped sweeping, the headlights dimmed, and out stepped Mark. He looked disheveled, uneasy, uncertain, the opposite of the polished man she once admired. "Emily," he said, voice low, "we need to talk." Tom took a step back, instinctively shielding her with his presence. Emily felt her pulse quicken. Anger, fear, confusion all mixing into something sharp. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Mark looked around the workshop, his jaw tightening. "This is where you've been spending your time?" "Yes," she said firmly. "And this is what you left me for?" he snapped. That did it. Emily stepped forward, eyes blazing. "I didn't leave you for a place," she said. "I left you because you hurt my father, and you lied to me." Mark opened his mouth, but Emily raised a hand. "Not now. Not here." He exhaled sharply. "Then when?" She met his eyes. "When I'm ready." Mark stared at her, then at Tom, then at the workshop full of life and people. And for the first time, he understood he was losing her. Maybe already had. He got back into his SUV and drove away, taillights shrinking into the dark. Emily exhaled shakily. Tom placed a gentle hand on her back. "You don't have to face him alone," he said softly. Emily nodded. "I won't." But she had no idea how deep the coming confrontation would cut. Emily locked the workshop door, her hands trembling. "Dad, I think he's not going to let this go." Tom nodded slowly. "People who fear losing control usually don't." Emily swallowed. "I'm scared of what he'll do next." Tom squeezed her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, sweetheart, and you're not alone anymore." She leaned into him. But neither of them knew. The truth she was about to uncover in the coming days would change the confrontation entirely. The next few days moved quietly, too quietly. Emily tried to focus on the workshop, organizing donations, helping her father teach, repairing old equipment, but something gnawed at the back of her mind like a warning she couldn't shake. Her father noticed. "You're thinking too loudly again," he said gently one morning. Emily smiled weakly. I know Mark. He doesn't walk away. Not really. He circles." Tom nodded. "Like a wolf." "Exactly." Tom leaned back in his chair. "Emily, whatever comes next, remember this. You're not the woman he thinks he can control." She placed a hand over his. "And you're not the man he thinks he can humiliate." He smiled softly, a smile lined with years of quiet strength, but neither of them knew. The darkest truth was waiting just beyond the next sunrise. On Thursday morning, Emily opened her laptop at the kitchen table to upload volunteer schedules. A new email notification appeared. Sender: unknown. Subject: you deserve to know the truth. Her heartbeat stumbled. She clicked it. Inside was a single sentence. Ask your father why he stopped receiving your checks. Emily froze. What? Her breath hitched. What checks? She hadn't sent money to her father regularly. Only birthday gifts, occasional help with repairs, holiday presents. But checks? Monthly? She frowned. There was also an attachment. She opened it. It was a scan of a bank statement in her name. Her eyes widened. For the past 18 months, someone had been withdrawing monthly transfers from her account to an account she didn't recognize. Transfers labeled care support, Thomas Whitaker. Except her father never received $1. A cold wave spread through her chest. Dad, she whispered. Her chair scraped softly against the floor as she stood and walked to the living room, laptop shaking in her hands. Dad, did you ever get money from me? Tom blinked in confusion. What money? She turned the screen toward him. His eyes narrowed as he read. I never saw any of this, he whispered. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. Dad, this means someone was taking money in your name. From my account. Tom looked stunned. But who would… And then his face changed. Slowly, painfully, like someone realizing a truth they prayed wasn't real. Emily, he whispered. Your husband handled your finances for a while, didn't he? Her heart cracked open. Oh God. It all clicked into place. The deleted calls, the filtered messages, the blocked neighbor, the hidden medical updates, the dependence, the control, the isolation, and now, financial theft, in her father's name, for 18 months. Emily pressed a hand to her chest, breath trembling. I need to confront him, she said quietly. I need to end this. But Tom reached for her hand. Sweetheart, don't go alone. I won't, she said. Not anymore. Emily drove toward Willow Creek with a storm inside her. Bare trees blurred past the windows. Wind howled across the empty fields. Clouds hung low and heavy, as though the sky itself braced for impact. Tom sat beside her, silent but steady. Every now and then he cleared his throat, a small sound that reminded her she wasn't walking into this battle alone. You don't have to protect me, she said softly. He shook his head. Emily, a father's job isn't to protect his daughter from the world. He looked her in the eyes. It's to stand beside her while she faces it. Her heart tightened. He was weaker now, older, fragile in ways she didn't want to admit. But in that moment, he looked like the strongest man alive. They pulled into the driveway of her home, the house that once felt like a safe haven, but now felt contaminated. The curtains were drawn. The lights were on. Mark's SUV was in the driveway, gleaming like a predator waiting for prey. Emily inhaled. Are you ready? She asked her father. Tom nodded. Are you? Emily gripped the handle of the front door. Yes. But what happened next was nothing she could have prepared for. The moment she stepped inside, Mark appeared in the foyer. He looked tired, irritated, and strangely expectant. Emily, he said stiffly, I figured you'd come crawling back eventually. But she didn't cower. She didn't shrink. She stood taller than she ever had in his presence. No, she said. I came for answers. Mark's eyes flickered to Tom. Oh, so you brought your pet project. Emily stepped between them. My father is not your project, or your burden, or your excuse. Mark raised an eyebrow. So you're finally choosing him over me? Her voice sharpened. I'm choosing truth. She held up her laptop, screen glowing with the scanned statement. What is this? Mark glanced at it, too quickly. Emily, we already talked about boundaries. No, she snapped. We're talking about fraud. Mark scoffed. Oh God, not this again. 18 months, Emily said, voice cracking. 18 months of money being taken from my account, in my father's name. Mark rolled his eyes. I handled your finances because you're terrible at it. Those transfers were for household needs. Then why label them as care for my father? Mark's jaw clenched. Tom stepped forward. "You stole from my daughter," he said quietly, "and you used my name to do it." Mark snapped. "Oh, shut up, old man. You think you matter? You're the reason she's a mess. You're the reason—" Emily's hand shot up. "Don't you finish that sentence." Mark froze, but the damage was done. Emily walked toward him slowly. Her voice was trembling, but not weak. "Mark, you isolated me from my father. You cut off his calls. You hid his health. You controlled my finances. You humiliated him in my own home. And you," he spat, "let me." The words hit her, but instead of breaking her, they hardened her. She lifted her chin. "You're right." Mark blinked. "And that's why this ends today." Mark laughed. "Ends? You think you can end a marriage because your father's manipulating you?" Emily's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but clarity. "My father didn't manipulate me," she whispered. "You did." She handed him a folder. Bank statements, printed messages, recordings from the voicemail provider she called that morning, screenshots of blocked numbers. Mark flipped through them, and his face drained of color. "I spoke with an attorney," Emily said calmly. "This is fraud, emotional abuse, financial misconduct." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "Emily, let's go. We don't need to hear any more." But Mark wasn't done. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. "You'll come crawling back. You always do." Emily stepped closer, face inches from his. "No," she whispered. "This time, I'm walking away." She turned to her father. "Dad, let's go home." Tom nodded, stepping beside her. Mark shouted after them. "You think you can build a life without me? You think you can take him with you? You're nothing without me, Emily." But she didn't turn around. Not once. As she led her father out the front door, she whispered, "I'm finally free." The door closed. The wind howled. The chapter ended. But what Emily didn't know yet was that the next chapter would become her father's legacy and her redemption. As they walked to the car, Tom felt faint, his breath shallow, his steps unsteady. "Dad?" Emily whispered, panic rising. He steadied himself. "I'm okay. Just tired." But Emily saw something in his eyes, a shadow, a warning, a truth too heavy to speak. Because sometimes, when a heart breaks, even healing brings pain. Emily drove her father back home in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because some emotions are too large for words. The confrontation with Mark replayed in her mind like a storm, the betrayal, the anger, the theft, the humiliation. But now, as Maplewood's quiet streets came into view, the noise inside her finally settled. She squeezed her father's hand. "Dad, everything is going to be different now." He nodded weakly, exhaustion lining his face. "You did the right thing, sweetheart, even if it hurts." Emily swallowed hard. "It hurts because I let it go on for so long." Tom turned to her, eyes soft, full of forgiveness she didn't deserve. "You didn't let anything happen. Sometimes love blinds us to the cracks in the glass." Emily's voice wavered. "And sometimes I broke the glass myself." But Tom shook his head gently. "No, you survived it." Those words, so simple, so quiet, were enough to crack open the first light of healing inside her. Over the next few weeks, Emily cared for her father around the clock. She cooked his meals, managed his medications, drove him to appointments, helped him dress on difficult mornings, sat beside him during the quiet evenings when his breath grew shallow. And though he smiled, laughed, taught and loved, something had changed. Some days were good, even great. He joked with neighbors, fixed a radio, taught 16s how to change a carburetor. But other days, his hands trembled, his chest tightened, his energy dwindled. "Dad, we need to consider the pacemaker," Emily insisted gently one evening. He stared at the fireplace, flames flickering like memories. "We will," he said, "but not yet. Not until after the winter festival." Emily blinked. "The what?" He smiled, the warm, proud smile he used to give her when she was little. "The Maplewood Winter Helping Hands Festival. It's been gone for years, but The workshop brought everyone back together. They want to revive it. Emily's heart swelled. And they want you to lead it? She asked. He shrugged shyly. I guess so. Emily covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Dad, that's incredible. He patted her hand. You gave me purpose again, sweetheart. He didn't say the rest out loud. Purpose kept me alive this long. But Emily felt it. She knew time was no longer a resource. It was a countdown. And she vowed silently, I will not waste a second more. In the weeks leading to the festival, the workshop exploded with life. Children painted signs. Retirees repaired heaters for low-income homes. Veterans fixed bicycles for Christmas donations. Teens tuned engines for the parade trucks. Local farmers donated wood for building new shelves. Carpenters installed ramps for disabled visitors. Shop owners provided hot cocoa, tools, heaters, gloves. And every day Tom was at the center of it all, teaching, laughing, encouraging, giving. People didn't just come to fix broken things. They came to be around him. Emily watched her father rediscover the joy he had buried years ago, the joy of helping. It filled her with hope and fear, because each burst of energy cost him. Each long day ended with a deeper exhaustion. Each night he winced when he thought she wasn't looking. The community saw him as a pillar. Emily saw him as a man whose foundation was beginning to crack. 3 days before the festival, as the workshop buzzed with volunteers, a hush fell across the room. Emily turned and saw him, Mark, standing at the entrance, hands in his pockets, eyes haunted. He looked smaller, older, life-worn, like a man who had finally met the consequences of his own choices. People stepped aside as he approached. He stopped before Emily, swallowing hard. Can we talk? He asked. Tom paused his work quietly, watching from a distance, not with anger, but with caution. Emily crossed her arms. What do you want, Mark? He exhaled sharply. I want to say, I'm sorry. Silence fell. Even the teenagers stopped hammering. Emily's voice was steady. For what? You'll have to be specific. Mark looked at the floor. For everything, he said. For the lies, the manipulation, the money, for hurting your father, for hurting you. Emily's eyes didn't soften, because apologies don't erase wounds, they only acknowledge them. And why now? She asked. Mark's jaw tightened. I lost my job. Emily blinked. What? I got too used to managing other people, controlling things. I pushed too far with the wrong client and… He shrugged brokenly. It all fell apart. Emily said nothing. Mark continued. When you left, everything went quiet. Too quiet. I finally had to hear my own voice. He shook his head. It wasn't a voice I liked. Emily felt a pang of pity, but not love. Not any more. Mark looked at her father then. Mr. Whitaker, I'm sorry, truly. I was wrong. Tom set down the wrench, wiped his hands on a rag, and approached him slowly. He studied Mark's face, really studied it, then said softly, I forgive you. Mark's eyes widened. Emily's breath caught. Tom continued gently, forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, but holding anger poisons the one doing the holding. Mark swallowed hard. Thank you, he whispered. Emily turned away, overwhelmed. Some wounds take longer to close. Snow began falling on the morning of the Maplewood Winter Helping Hands Festival. Large, gentle flakes drifting peacefully, layering rooftops, cars, sidewalks. The workshop glowed with Christmas lights. Music echoed from speakers. Children ran through the snow laughing. Neighbors gathered with thermoses and mittens. And at the center, Tom, dressed in his old work jacket, the one Helen patched decades ago, smiling brighter than the lights, greeting everyone by name. Emily watched him with a full heart. Her father, the man she had nearly lost to neglect, to illness, to someone else's cruelty, was being celebrated. Alive, loved, seen. The mayor gave him a plaque. Neighbors gave him letters. The high schoolers gave him a framed photo of the workshop. And then Tom stepped onto the small wooden stage. He cleared his throat. Maplewood, he began, voice steady. I never thought I'd see anything like this again. The crowd fell silent. For years I thought my hands didn't matter anymore, that my time was done. But you showed me that as long as we can help each other, none of us are ever really done." He looked at Emily. "And this is because of my daughter." Emily swallowed a sob. "She reminded me that even broken things can be fixed if someone cares enough to try." People wiped their eyes. Tom's voice softened. "And I want you all to remember something my Helen used to say. A life spent loving is a life well spent." Emily covered her mouth, trembling. "And today," Tom finished, "I feel like the richest man alive." The crowd erupted in applause. Snow fell harder, swirling around him like a blessing. But as Tom stepped off the stage, his smile faltered, his knees buckled. Emily screamed, "Dad!" Hands rushed to help. Nurses in the crowd sprang forward. Tom clutched his chest, breath rasping. "It's okay, sweetheart," he gasped. "Just dizzy." But Emily knew. This wasn't dizziness. This was the moment she'd been fearing. They carried him into the workshop, laid him on a padded table. Emily held his hand, tears streaming. "Dad, stay with me, please." He squeezed weakly. I'm right here." Paramedics arrived. They lifted him onto a stretcher. Tom looked at his daughter, eyes glassy but calm. "Emily," he whispered, "you fixed everything." Her lip trembled. "No, Dad." "You did." They loaded him into the ambulance. Emily climbed in beside him. The doors closed. The siren wailed into the snowy air. The ride to the hospital was long and silent except for the beeping monitor. Tom turned his head slowly. "Sweetheart." Emily leaned in. "Yes, Dad?" His breath was shallow. "You gave me more than I ever gave you." She shook her head violently. "No, you gave me everything. Everything." He smiled faintly. "I'm proud of you." She sobbed. "I'm proud of you too." His fingers tightened around hers. "Emily, promise me something. Anything. Everything. Promise you'll keep the workshop going." Emily nodded through tears. "I promise." He smiled. "Good, good. Then I can rest." "Dad, don't say that." He squeezed her hand a final time. "I love you, sweetheart." Emily cried harder. "I love you too, Dad." The beeping slowed, then steadied, then faded. Emily screamed his name, but Tom Whitaker, the man who fixed everything he touched, had peacefully joined the woman he loved. Maplewood mourned like a family. The workshop closed for a week. Candles lined the driveway. Neighbors left flowers, letters, photos, tools he'd repaired over the years. Emily stood among them, shattered, but held. Held by the community her father built. Held by the legacy he left. Held by the love he planted in every corner of the town. Even Mark came, quiet, respectful, changed. He placed a single wrench on the memorial table and whispered, "I'm sorry for all of it." Emily nodded. "I know." She had no anger left, only gratitude that she had returned in time. At Tom's memorial service, the church overflowed. People stood in the aisles, along the walls, outside in the snow. The pastor said, "Some people fix cars, some fix homes. Tom fixed hearts." Everyone nodded. Emily stepped to the front. She held the photo of her father teaching a child at the workshop. Her voice trembled. "My father spent his whole life fixing things for other people, but I only started fixing us when it was almost too late." She paused, gathering strength. "We don't get to choose how long we have, but we get to choose what we do with the time we're given." Tears slid down her cheeks. And he chose love. When she finished, the entire room rose to their feet, a standing ovation for a man who never asked for applause. 3 years later, the Whitaker Community Workshop had grown into the largest volunteer repair center in the region. They offered free repairs for seniors, classes for teens, scholarships for students entering trade schools, job training for veterans, community events every season. Above the entrance hung a wooden sign, "Whitaker's hands where broken things are made whole." And under that sign stood Emily, older, wiser, peaceful. Every year she told the story of her father. Every year the town listened. Every year someone new cried. One winter afternoon, as she'd locked the workshop, she looked at the sky, snow falling softly, like the day she lost him. She whispered, "I kept my promise, Dad." And the wind answered like a gentle memory, "You fixed everything. Pride ruins what love tries to fix. But regret teaches us to choose differently next time. And time doesn't erase regret, it reveals it." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. And stay with us. Another powerful story is already on its way.